All right, good evening, nerds around the world. Welcome to episode 163 of the Nerds Unite as One podcast. I'm your host, Paul English, and we have a great show for you, like always. This is the beginning of a theme of several episodes we're going to be doing. First episode of it. So, guys, last year, so there were several monumental television shows celebrated milestone anniversaries in 2019. And the shows that I wanted to, talk about in honor of these milestones, but unfortunately, due to the collapse of the demise of Google Plus, we weren't able to. But now we got Streamyard, our show's back, and well, better late than never. So we're going to be kicking off that theme. So this is first of several episodes celebrating these milestone anniversaries, and the first of several shows. And the first one we're going to be discussing today is Scooby Doo, Where Are You?, which celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2019. So we're going to celebrate that by talking about this franchise as a whole. To help me do that, I got a crew of regulars. It is Jack and Colton. How's it going, boys?
Doing pretty good. And I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling forget it.
Good to be here. Scrappy Dappy Doo.
All right.
Scrappy. Well, we'll get to them later.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, let's jump right in. Let's start with this question. I want to know what is it you guys, because I assume all of us here, because we love Scooby Doo. We were Scooby Doo fans growing up. We probably still are right now. So, what is it about this franchise that you guys love so much? What drew you to it? What keeps you interested in it? Why do you enjoy watching it as a kid, and why do you enjoy watching it now? So, Jack, I'll start with you. What is it about Scooby Doo that drew you to it as a kid, and why does it keep drawing you back?
I love the mysteries they go on, the different monsters, and just the bonds that they have between all of them. And I still watch it because it still has those. In fact, in some of the modern incarnations, they've done even more on the relationship between the characters.
All right, Colton, what about you?
I like how they've, how even though they've stuck to a formula, they've also kind of, played with and evolved over time. It's like, sure, a lot of it's been the same, but sometimes the formula some things stay the same because they work, but they knew how to keep it from getting stale. They introduced different things here or there, from making them kids to having them fight actual monsters to then going back to basics, that sort of stuff. It's always fun to see how Scooby-Doo has managed to remain a constant in pop culture rather than, just being a thing of the past and then just sort of fading into existence. And it's also funny how Scooby-Doo inspired so many imitators. I mean, Josie and the Pussycats, Jabberjaw, boy. There was so many of them that Cartoon Network even had a block of Scooby-Doo imitators.
Yeah. What I loved about it, like Jack said, it was always the mystery aspect, and I like how it allowed the audience to kind of participate in the mystery. Like, you're figuring out the clues with them, you're evolving your deductive reasoning skills, and the mysteries were just fun. The characters were likable, simple too, and I think that's what I found appealing about it as a kid, and why I still enjoy it all these years later. It's such a it was when it came out, it was certainly a unique show of its time, and there's something to be said about a show that's lasted 50 years and still has kind of stayed the same. And I think, there's something cool about that. So, all right, so as we talked about, it's pretty much stayed the same throughout 50 years, and the most prominent features is it always has the same 5 cast. It always has the same cast pretty much all the time. So you got the dog, of course, Scooby Doo, the talking dog with the fun way he talks, adding R instead of S in everything he said. You got Shaggy, the scaredy cat, pothead, who explains why he's always. Let's be honest, he probably is a pothead. That's why he's always hungry. You got Fred, who is the de facto leader of the group, always saying, "Let's split up and look for clues." You got Velma, the nerd, and if rumors are to believe, possibly a lesbo too. And then you got Daphne, the pretty one, the one who was pretty cool to look at, but really didn't do a whole lot. Was usually the damsel in distress most of the time. So let's talk about that main cast. What did you have a favorite? Was there one who annoyed you a little bit, or what do you just like about them that explains why they've stayed the same pretty much the whole time? Colton, I'll come to you first on that. Main cast, what are your thoughts on them?
I always never really thought that Daphne was as big a damsel in distress as parodies made her out to be. It's been a while, but I don't think I think the nostalgia critic kind of pointed out that Scooby and Shaggy probably got in more trouble than Daphne ever did. But regardless, I thought that this group worked pretty well as a 5-man band. They were all very easily relatable because we had Fred Fred was the good looking kind of jockish looking guy. We got Daphne, the pretty popular one. We had the nerdy Velma, and then we got the outcast Shaggy, the outcast Shaggy, and then their dog rounding out the group. And they all worked together pretty well as a team dynamic. And I liked how they've how they've changed over the years. I think one of my favorite changes was probably Velma, who I'm doing my screen.
I'm doing yes. Keep going.
By the time we got to Mystery Incorporated, there was like this pretty humorous bit with Velma where she's talking about how they were looking into an unsolved mystery, and then someone said, "So did they ever figure it out?" And then Velma says, "What part of unsolved mystery do you not understand?" It's pretty cool, and I also liked how they were probably my favorite iteration of the group though was a pup named Scooby. Was their iteration in a pup named Scooby Doo, because I think that's where their personalities where the group really started to get more defined personalities, I guess you could say. Like Fred was a little bland in like maybe the first season and the first couple of iterations of Scooby Doo, but I loved how hilarious he was as the conspiracy theorist in a pup named Scooby Doo, and I liked how they really emphasized Velma's importance as the smart one of the group and everything. And it was also funny how Scooby and Shaggy were exactly the same though. So yeah, they're a great band of characters to watch, and they are probably what made this franchise so easy to get into, no matter what point in the franchise you're watching.
All right, Jack, I'll come to you next. Give me your thoughts on the main cast.
No, I love the main cast, and I thought Mystery Incorporated did a great deal of going into the different personalities, like Fred and Daphne, and how obsessed he was with traps, and how obsessed he was with Daphne. They tried a Shaggy and Velma relationship, so they got more into those characters, and it just really worked. And I just really like the characters. It got into all of them.
Okay, so obviously that's the main cast, but there have been a lot of side characters who've joined them on and off throughout their 50-year run. So I want to ask you guys, what's the most memorable side character to you? Who's the one that's really stuck out the most? And I think we all have the same answer, only because he was marketed so fucking heavily. But for me, I'd probably have to say Scrappy is the most memorable, just because he's been in the most things. I remember seeing like the first season of his debut series, and he really wasn't all that bad. He was not as the annoying little prick that he ultimately came to be. But I think that's just because they knew to like keep him as a side character, to keep him in the background, not have him be involved in everything. It was only when they tried to push him as a lead that he became annoying as fuck. But he's always been the most memorable, just because he's been in the most things. Jack, what about you? Do you have like a memorable side character?
Yeah, I'm going with you, Scrappy Dappy Doo.
Oh, jeez.
Puppy
Power!
All right, why is he so memorable to you?
Because he was just odd, and he was always the brave one of the group, which I thought was interesting, which we never really had with Scooby or Shaggy. But he was like, "Oh, I want to do it," I'm like this tiny mutt. It was very interesting to see.
Okay, Colton, what about you? Did you have a memorable side character throughout this run that comes to mind, and why?
Well, I did not choose Scrappy, but
okay.
Real quick, I actually never really found Scrappy to be annoying, to be honest. It wasn't until I didn't even know people hated him until the internet became a thing. I'm like, people really, really hate this character. I'm kind of surprised. But yeah, My memorable side character, and I guess you could probably say he's actually more of a running gag, actually, if anything, but he's still pretty damn memorable, and that is from a pup named Scooby Doo, Red Herring. What is Stuart Jones?
Yeah, he stands out pretty well. All right, what is about him stands out to you?
Just the fact that they actually had the guts to keep this running gag going the entire series. I mean, I know it wasn't all that long, about maybe 20-something episodes, but it was always funny the different ways that Fred would accuse Red Herring of the crime no matter what, and then Red's various ways of telling Freddy that he had nothing to do with it, from sending him a telegram to calling him and saying he can't make it, to tell him he didn't do it, and then Daffy sending her butler to get Red to come over. Everything, and then it was probably capped off by the best joke of the Red Herring running gag, was when it turned out that Red actually was the villain, but
yes!
Red had promised to go 24 hours without accusing him.
Oh, that was legendary! I remember that episode. That was legendary.
Like, Fred had like a total mental breakdown. He was like, "I knew it! I knew it! I knew it!"
Oh my god! Yeah, I remember that episode. That was a damn good one. That was a damn good one. Okay. So I want to. So obviously we've had the cast of main heroes and the side heroes have always been memorable, but let's talk about villains for a second. This obviously was most of these. Obviously, we know the formula that pretty much all the villains turn out to be, bad guys in masks. But But some of them could be pretty fun, inventive, and, hell, some of them you could say were kind of scary. So I want to ask you guys, what are like the 3 villains throughout the entire run of the franchise? So Scooby Doo, where are you? What's new Scooby Doo? Pup Name, just every iteration. What are some like the top 3? What are your top 3 favorite villains? The one who just stood out the most? Jack, let me start with you on that. Just give me like 3.
One of them is Professor Pericles from Mystery Incorporated, who was a parrot who was the villain, and it was very unexpected. And then you find out that he was a member of the original Mystery Incorporated gang, and he was just really funny and menacing, and you never really expected it to be him until it was him. Another one is the Phantom Virus from Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase. I love that movie. And then the other one is the classic, the Creeper.
Oh, yes.
Creeper.
Yeah, he was definitely one to remember. All right, Colton, what about you? What are some like 3 villains that really stand out to you from Scooby Doo?
Well, I also chose the Phantom Virus from Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase. How he exists makes absolutely no sense, but I really
Who cares?
What'd you say?
Who cares?
Of course, but I really, yeah, you're right. But I really loved his design and his voice, and it was pretty dang creepy to say the least. And my next one is probably a villain most people probably won't remember, but from the 2nd season of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? It is the Headless Spectre. What I liked about the Headless Spectre is that he's actually one of the few villains to properly use the Scooby Doo hoax, I'd say, because a lot of them, whenever they're trying to scare people away, it's actually just going to draw more attention to them. Whereas I think he's trying to scare people away from his house because he's trying to find a hidden fortune within it that's legally his, and he doesn't want anyone trying to come over and steal it. And anyone just happening to look around and notice, hey, there's this headless guy walking around. It's an easy to pull off thing that wouldn't have people be curious. It would actually have them be legitimately freaked out, I'd say. And I also liked how he was actually a friendly guy in the end overall. And my 3rd one is another guy that I think used the Scooby Doo hoax more properly than most villains, and that is from a pup named Scooby Doo, Stinkweed, who is he's got a very good look and voice, and I liked how his evil plan was that Stinkweed was a movie character, and the person that was behind the mask was Stinkweed's actor, who hated playing the character so much that he thought if he could cause enough terror as the monster, that would get the studio to shut down production on Stinkweed forever, and then he can make it out like a bandit with all the money that he stole in the process. So, pretty solid plan overall.
Yes, indeed. So for me, like the three villains that really stood out for me, also like Golden, I chose Stinkweed. In addition to all that, I love the name. Something on the name was just funny to me as a kid, and I also love the music, the theme he got. Because if you want one of the running trends of a puppet named Scooby Doo, that there would be this dance number like right in the middle of the song and in the show, and it would always feature the villain. And I love the music that he had. That was a catchy beat he had. Another villain, and also from a puppet named Scooby Doo, was the cheese monster from the Scooby Snack Factory episode where they ran out of Scooby. That was an interesting design. Again, it's a nice theme, and I love the theme of that episode. And then the next one that stands out is all the way back from the original Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And that was Charlie, the Funland robot, because that guy, I don't know what is something about him was just unnerving. Even today, that's like, okay, that's just messed up. Why would you have that freaky robot running around a theme park? What were you thinking, dude?
He wasn't. That's why his sister sabotaged the robot. She's like, yeah, I think people are going to be freaked out by a robot running every single thing in the park.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some villains that stand out to me. Okay, so there have been a lot of iterations of Scooby-Doo. Obviously, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You was the first one, but there's Scooby and Scrappy. There's Pup Named Scooby-Doo. What's New Scooby-Doo? So there have been a whole, and obviously in those new Scooby-Doo movies. So there have been a lot of different iterations of this franchise, and naturally, some are going to get talked about more than others. We've brought up the original, of course. We brought up What's a Pup Named Scooby-Doo. We brought up Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated a lot. In your guys' opinion, what's one iteration of this franchise that you personally feel does not get the recognition it deserves? You think, hey, this is a really good iteration of this, franchise. How come it's not getting talked about as much? So, Colton, I'll come to you on that. What's one iteration of Scooby-Doo you think deserves some more recognition? Give some praise to it.
It's it's talked about, but not in a positive way. I think this deserves more positive recognition, and that's Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. Because, like I said, you bring up Scrappy to any Scooby-Doo fan, and they'll eventually go into this giant tirade about how Scrappy ruined the series, and then it makes you stop and wonder, has anyone actually gone back and watched the actual Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo in a while? Because it feels like Scrappy was in like more than one iteration, so like Paul mentioned, he wasn't all that. He was pretty good when he was introduced, so I think people should go back and actually give his original show a watch, and that as opposed to judging it based on all of his later appearances, I guess you could say.
All right. Jack, what about you? What's one iteration of this franchise that you think needs some propping up?
The Scooby-Doo live-action movies, the two of them.
Really?
By James Gunn. Yeah.
Really?
Especially the second one. I thought it was really cool. Was they in the second one especially? They dealt with real monsters. It wasn't a guy in a costume. It was actual monsters, and I liked what they did with Daphne, making her kind of a badass.
And she's played by Sarah Gellar.
So what do you expect?
That doesn't help. That doesn't hurt. She can pick me anywhere. And then they had a little more adult humor in the movies, and I don't think they're really regarded as much.
Okay, I have to disagree with you on that, but I'll get into why later. So for me, I think one iteration that does not get brought up enough is the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. And I think that's part of the reason why, because, well, it only lasted 13 episodes. But this was a very effective short series. First of all, this series actually does focus on real monsters, specifically 13 of the most dangerous ghosts of all time that, of course, Scooby and Shaggy let out by mistake. So they're the only ones who can get them out, put them back. The monsters themselves are very well designed, and what really steals this is you have the creepy and Vincent Van Gogh voiced by the iconic Vincent Price. And yes, that is Vincent Price voicing the character. And he is so good in this role. So I mean, yeah, I would say, check this one out when you get a chance. And like I said, it only lasted 13 episodes. And the weird thing is, throughout the run of this series, they only caught 12 of the 13 ghosts. You had to wait till like 2 years ago when they caught the final one in that recent animated film, Scooby Doo: Curse of the 13th Ghost, came out like a year or two ago, which and it was nothing to write home about. It was decent, but I mean, yeah, the series itself. Check this out when you get a chance.
Real quick, I want to say that about Vincent Price's voice, I always loved the opening when he's like, "Only you can return the demons to the chest," and then Scooby's like, "Why us?" And then he says, "Because you let them out." Yes, well, you know what? Hey, Scooby screwed up, so you got to own up and take responsibility. You let him out. All right, so to close this out, in addition to the dozens, at least half a dozen television iterations that have been on, there's also been several movies around this character, mostly animated, a few live action. The less said about those, the better. So I want to know what your guys' favorite Scooby-Doo movie is. I think we're all going to say the same thing, but I'm curious that maybe we have different reasons as to why. So, Jack, I'll come to you. What's your favorite Scooby-Doo movie?
My favorite is Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase.
Okay.
I really love the movie and that they got to go into the digital computer and meet a digital version of the Scooby Doo of the Scooby Doo gang. They had an interesting villain, the Phantom Virus, because he can go anywhere, and he just showed up a lot of times, and they could fight digital villains, and they could go to different lands, and they would go and see different things from their past capers.
Okay, all right. Surprising, but okay. Colton, what about you?
Mine is Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. Mm-hmm. What I like about this one is that it's hardly the first time we've ever seen Scooby and the gang fighting real monsters. It's the first time I think it's the first time where it's recognized in universe that it's their first encounter with monsters. Like usually if they ever see real monsters, they'll kind of just roll with it. But here they're like, it's like treated as a legitimately terrifying experience rather than just a gag on the Scooby Doo hoax. And I also liked how it was, kind of an in-universe, like, X amount of years later where we see the teams, growing up. They're not the meddling kids anymore. They're meddling adults and what have you. And it was, and the zombies were pretty freaky. And I also liked how there was, more to the story than just, Scooby and the gang are fighting zombies. There is still a mystery to it. And it was a pretty effective one, I'd say, overall, with a pretty satisfying and creepy climax.
Absolutely. And mine is also Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. And if you guys seen the Nostalgia Critics review of it when he closed out Nostalgia Ween last year, though, I mean, first of all, I don't know how true this is, but there's a comment on that video that I guess if it's true that this was actually Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island was actually supposed to be like the final piece of new Scooby-Doo material that was going to come out, and then that's it, no more. This was kind of supposed to be like their finale. So kind of similar to like Power Rangers, they were like, well, screw it, let's just go what Power Rangers in Space was. The producers and everyone was like, oh, screw it, let's just go all out and make this the best we can. And I mean, for adults, really, there's not much to, but for kids or grew up with it, yeah, this was damn good. I mean, first of all, the animation got a huge upgrade. It's absolutely gorgeous. The atmosphere is so tense and just it sucks you in. There's like there can be moments of legit terror in this movie. I remember watching it. There were several moments I was like, what the fuck was that? Like there were some genuinely scary moments. Especially, the big zombie scene near the climax of the film. I mean, the music kind of takes away some of the fear out of it, but but it was still a really good song, and the with that kind of plus the atmosphere. It's almost like if Rob Zombie made like a music video for kids. That's how it would look. But yeah, the mystery was genuine. It was just everything about it was absolutely fantastic. And, you know, there's a reason why over 20 years later people consider it the magnum opus of the franchise. It is damn good. And if you're a fan of this franchise, you should check out. If you haven't seen it yet, check out Zombie-On. It's on Netflix right now. It's just amazing. So that is definitely my favorite iteration Scooby-Doo movie.
And the sequel came out a little while ago.
And then
we don't talk about that. That was horrendous.
Yeah, it wasn't that good.
Sucked. That sucked. We do not talk about that.
Well, now you
Do
got
not
my
talk about it. Ugh. Okay. And on that dour note, I think we're going to close it up. Thanks a lot, Jack. You suck for making us end on a sour note. So
we've had a good show.
I don't know.
Better than Jack.
All right.
About we end it on, I have a thing we can end it on. Besides the original, what's everybody's favorite incarnation? Besides the original,
I'd probably have to say a pup named Scooby Doo. I don't know what I loved that series. I loved the music. I loved the personality of the characters. Something about it it stuck with me, and I really did. I enjoy a pup named Scooby Doo.
Mine is also a pup named Scooby Doo, pretty much for the same reasons as Paul. I love the personalities, animation, all the gags and everything, and I also like how, you know, I think this has some of my favorite you meddling kids moments where the villains will say I would have gotten away with it too, and then Scooby then usually clears his throat or comes rushing in, and they're like, oh yeah, and that mangy mutt also.
Yeah.
mine, as you guys can probably tell, is Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Like I said, they go into the personalities. Another thing that I really love, which was new for the Scooby-Doo, was they had an overarching story throughout the seasons instead of it's like it's a one-off thing. They actually have like an interesting story.
I'm gonna have to check that out at some point because I haven't seen it yet just because the animation was just horrendous to me.
You think the animation was bad in this? You should see the series that came after it.
Well, maybe not. All right, so with that, I think we'll wrap up this first episode of Celebrations. Colton, Jack, thank you very much for being here. It was fun to talk Scooby-Doo with you.
It's glad to be here. We're looking forward to what's coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm gonna go look around my house to see if I can find some Scooby snacks.
So, guys, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week where we're going to be discussing another show celebrating a milestone 50th anniversary. We are going to be taking a trip down to Sesame Street next week to talk about one of the most iconic kid shows of all time. Probably one of the first shows made for preschool. So we'll see you next week on Sesame Street. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.